I've just had one of those disassociation moments, you know, when you suddenly kind of break frame. I don't know if you know that. It's not entirely surprising. I'm here in this rather nice forest here in Cornwall, a park, country park, and I was standing amongst some trees up there, some ferns, you know, and I don't know if you can see, but in my backpack I've got these rabbit ears I've made, these new rabbit ears. So I was standing in this bunch of ferns, almost completely naked, with these rabbit ears, which actually made out of a pair of girls' tights, aged 9 to 10, a pair of girls' tights on my head, with like garden canes pushed up the inside so they'll stand upright, you know, and look vaguely like long ears. So I was standing in there with the video camera pointing at myself, and occasional people walking past. I just had one of those, what the fuck am I doing moments. You know, like as if you look yourself on the outside, think, Jesus, this is, what am I doing? Anyway, it's past now, so I'm still not sure what I'm doing, but I'm not anxious about it anymore. That's not really what I want to talk about. I did want to talk about nature a bit, really, because I am in the midst of rather beautiful nature here, as you can possibly see. But I'm thinking again about, it's partly about the conversation that Gary and Madden Mystic and now Pyrrho is involved in, one or two other people, to do with value of life, and specifically a video by Pyrrho's that I watched this morning called something like Worshipping the DNA. Worshipping the DNA. I don't really have any relationship to worshipping the DNA, but I do have a kind of relationship to something like worship and nature, which I think is a good surrogate for DNA in some ways. You know, because I've read quite a bit, partly at some recommendations that 2B Sirius made to me a couple of years ago actually. I've read quite a bit of stuff in the area of religious naturalism, Ursula Goodenough and those kind of people, who have this kind of, I guess it's a Spinoza kind of approach to nature, a bit. It's not really pantheism, it's more just, well, she describes it, Ursula Goodenough describes it as a kind of reverence for nature. You don't worship it, but you have a respect and reverence for it. So it has none of the trappings and none of the completely falsifiable non-falsifiable belief systems or whatever, you know, but it has none of those fake beliefs that religions has, but it has the religious attitude or something of the religious attitude. That's the idea of religious naturalism. You take on some of the sentiments of religious practice, but not the arcane, outdated and in many ways strange practices of religion, but you just kind of apply this to the actual world. And I've had some sympathy with it in the past. You know, I joined a Facebook group about religious naturalism, you know, and and I know people who are involved in that in variety of different ways. You know, some people are kind of out and out pantheists, almost from a kind of pagan relationship to, or a Wiccan relationship to nature, to very, very abstract versions, almost like Einstein or Spinoza. That approach, which is, as I say, there's none of the personification at all, it's purely an abstraction. So I have known some about that, and you know, as I say, I've had a little bit of sympathy with it. But I have to say, but I'm also becoming increasingly uneasy about it. I guess because of the discussions I've been involved in lately, but my own observations, and the kind of beautiful cruelty that nature presents. I've been watching a lot of nature shows on Eden, a TV station here in the UK recently, and they're fantastically made. I've got an HD television, so the picture quality is superb, you know, as you see this gazelle being brought down in ultra slow motion by this lion. It's fantastic, you know, formal quality of the image is great. The technical prowess that's being shown by the filmmakers is superb, so you're full of admiration in those kind of ways. But what you're watching is something really horrific. But it doesn't feel horrific for some reason, you know. It's partly made beautiful by those techniques, you know, by the technique of filming, and partly by just the sheer quality of the visual image. But there is a beauty about it, you know, that beautiful cruelty of nature, and that's slightly worrying, because of course nature should, at least in evolutionary aesthetic terms, be kind of beautiful, or at least large parts of it should. Or if not beautiful, then get that kind of terrifying beauty of the sublime, because that makes good evolutionary sense. You know, and there's quite a bit been written on evolutionary aesthetics. You know, Dissanayake and what's that guy called? Dennis Dutton have written quite a bit about that, evolutionary origins of the aesthetic sense. And it does lie, apparently, at least in those theories, in you know, quite atavistic urges and desires. And a forest like this is beautiful. It presents itself in beautiful colours, and it presents itself, and the sounds are beautiful, you know, because of, as I say, quite old things that's going on inside us. But you know, I don't know, we have critical faculties, don't we? We shouldn't be seduced by beauty anymore, but I'm seduced by it all the time. And we particularly shouldn't be seduced by beautiful cruelty, I wouldn't have thought. And we should be able to disentangle our feelings there from a decent interpretation of what's going on. I mean, listen to this bird song for a sec. It is beautiful, that bird song. I love bird song, I have to say. My mobile phone ringtone is usually a bird song until recently, and it's now a screaming cow, but it used to be a bird song for years. And I do like that. You know, but these birds are basically saying, this is my patch, keep away, or I'm ready to mate. You know, this is the kind of instrumental language, that's communication that's being conveyed there. You know, it's about that. And our interpretation of beauty out of that is driven by pretty much the same things that's driving the birds to make the sound. You know, an appreciation of something comforting or lyrical, or I don't know. You know what I'm saying, don't you, I think? Yeah, just to cut to the chase, I suppose this whole thing about religious naturalism and the worshipping of nature, either in its most extreme forms like the ones I've talked about in terms of pantheism, or in the much more subtle forms like Einstein's and Spinoza's very light pantheism and just kind of respect, reverence thing, or even in the kind of vernacular understandings that we have, the really routine understandings, like for example the balance of nature. Balance of nature mustn't be disturbed. You know, pretty much everybody agrees that that's a good thing. But why? I mean, balance is, it's an interesting term. I mean, balance is part of a very rudimentary aesthetics to do with symmetry and preservation of a stable state. But, you know, why would we want to preserve a balance of nature? Or, what else? Oh God, I did think of another example actually whilst I was talking, it's just disappeared. Yeah, but this idea that nature kind of knows, oh yeah, I know, yeah, endangered species, you know, a species going extinct. If a species goes extinct, species of animal, but anything really, we kind of mourn that as some kind of loss, you know. It's bad when species go extinct, we think, an unreserved bad thing. And an endangered species, listen to the phrase, endangered, a species that's in danger of going extinct. As if it's something on the edge of a cliff about to hurt itself, or it's a small child wandering near a swimming pool. You know, an endangered species. But is that necessarily a bad thing? You know, if species are going extinct, isn't it a bit like just a whole species just, you know, dying after the end of a long day, going to sleep at the end of a long day? I don't know. I don't think we should, you know, and that's part of the reverence thing, isn't it? It's part of the almost religious belief system that nature, even if it doesn't know what it's doing something, and it's something we shouldn't tamper with, and it's something we shouldn't criticise. In the same way that you can't criticise God, you know what I mean? God might do shit things, but if you're a believer, you're not supposed to notice that. You're not supposed to say, oh yes, well God is fantastic and omnibenevolent and omnipresent and omniscient, but he's got a bit of a bad temper. You know, you're not supposed to say things like that if you're a true believer. And the same thing goes on with nature. You know, even for the most atheistic of us, I think sometimes. Yeah, well, nature, yes, it's just, we're not allowed to criticise it. We're not supposed to point out that some parts of it, some animals within it, for example, are really, really crap and bad. That's a value judgment. We're not supposed to make value judgments of gods and nature. Anyway. And to the extent we do, we make them all wrong, don't we? You know, as like I said in the previous video, we tend to criticise scavenger animals. We don't like hyenas, we don't like vultures, we don't like maggots. But actually these animals are, I don't know, in terms of causing damage and suffering and pain to other animals, they're really low on the scale, you know, compared, as I say, to the lion sinking its jugular into the neck of the what's it called? You know, animals. Yeah, deer, let's say. So I don't know, we're not very good at value judgment when we make them, and we don't like making them anyway, and we're completely caught up in this reverence and respect for nature. Fuck it. We should say fuck it. We should middle finger nature, look. We should do this. Fuck off. Fuck off. Fuck off. Fuck you birds. Fuck off. I don't mean it quite like that, but you know what I mean. Yeah, so I don't think, so worshipping DNA, I don't know if we do that, but we certainly do covertly or overtly worship nature. We look to it for our source of morals. Even the atheists among us look to it for our source of morals. We look to it as a creator. It creates it, almost personified. It creates itself and it creates us. We look at it as a destroyer. It kills us at the end of the day. It fulfills all the function of a deity, it seems to me. And we might even have reverence and worship it, like we're not supposed to criticise it.